The sun shimmered over the muddy waters of the Brahmaputra River in Assam. A soft wind blew across the jungle, rustling the high canopies of trees and whispering secrets into the ears of the animals that called it home. Deep within the forest, an old elephant named Tara moved gracefully through the underbrush. Her massive body swayed with calm certainty, and her steps, though heavy, were silent, like memories slipping through time. Tara wasn't just any elephant. She was wise, older than many in her herd, and known for her gentle temperament. People in the nearby village spoke of her as if she were a guardian, silent observer who watched over the land with eyes that had seen generations come and go. That morning, Tara had wandered away from her usual route. Something felt different. In the air, there was a tension, subtle but present. She lifted her trunk, smelling the wind, sensing something she couldn't yet understand. Her ears flapped softly, catching distant sounds carried from across the river. In the village, on the other side, a young man named Arjun prepared to cross the swollen waters of the Brahmaputra. He was no stranger to the river, born and raised. Beside it, he knew its moods, its rages, and its silence. But today, it looked deceptively calm, like a predator playing dead. He had a reason to risk the crossing. His sister had gone into labor, and he needed to fetch the village midwife from the other side before it was too late. The boat he had was old, wooden, and patched in too many places, but there was no time to fix it. Every second felt like a ticking heartbeat in his ears. Arjun pushed off from the bank, the wooden oar cutting through the water. The current was strong, stronger than it appeared. Within minutes, the boat began to wobble. He tried to steady it, tried to keep his breathing calm. But the storm from the night before had unsettled the riverbed. The undercurrents pulled fiercely beneath the surface. Halfway across, the boat cracked. A loud groan of splintering wood rang out, and water rushed in like 100 desperate hands. Arjun panicked, clung to the edge, kicking, trying to keep his head above water. But the river was relentless. Tara, still on the other side, stopped in her tracks. Her ears stood alert. Something was wrong. She turned her head toward the river and listened again. Faint splash, a distant cry. It was there, just enough to stir her soul. Without thinking, without waiting, she moved toward the bank. Arjun's body thrashed as the current dragged him under. His limbs grew heavier. The sky above seemed to blur, and the world dimmed. Just when he thought he would disappear beneath the water for good, something massive entered the river with a splash that shook the banks. It was Tara. She stepped into the river with grace and power. Her legs pushed against the flow, muscles tensing as she moved faster than her age suggested. She could. Her trunk searched the water, reaching, feeling, till she brushed against something soft skin. Cloth. Arjun. She wrapped her trunk gently around his waist, lifting him from the water. His head lolled back, eyes half closed, but he was breathing. With slow, careful steps, Tara brought him back to the shore. Villagers who had seen the scene from afar came running, stunned by what they had just witnessed. They had known Tara to be wise, but this was beyond belief. Arjun lay coughing, shivering, but alive. His first sight, upon opening his eyes, was not the sky, not the trees, but the silhouette of an elephant, standing over him like an angel of earth and memory. He whispered one word, "Thank you," before slipping into unconsciousness. Tara didn't wait for applause. She didn't wait for anyone to crown her a hero. She turned, her trunk brushing the boy's hair once more, and walked back into the forest, leaving behind ripples in the mud, and a story that would be told for generations. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something that would bind the fates of man and elephant in ways no one had imagined. The Library of Alexandria was not just a building, it was a vision. A dream conceived in ancient Egypt that knowledge could be gathered, preserved, and shared with the world. Its walls were said to have held hundreds of thousands of scrolls, manuscripts, and records, some of which no longer exist anywhere else in history. But despite its towering legacy, the library vanished, burned, lost, and erased. And the question still haunts historians: who destroyed it and why? Founded in the early 3rd century BCE, under the reign of Ptolemy I, or his successor Ptolemy II. The Library of Alexandria was part of a larger institution called the Mausoleon, academic temple dedicated to the Muses, the goddesses of the arts and sciences. The library aimed to collect all the world's knowledge. Ambassadors and travelers passing through Alexandria were compelled to surrender any books they carried. These were then copied, and while the originals were often kept, the copies were returned. In this way, the library grew into a massive depository of ancient wisdom. The scholars who studied there were among the most brilliant minds of their age. Mathematicians, astronomers, poets, philosophers, they all found refuge in the scroll-filled halls of the library. It's said that over 400,000 scrolls were stored at one point, covering subjects from medicine to literature, from mathematics to geography. It was more than a place of reading. It was a sanctuary of civilization. And yet one of the greatest mysteries in history surrounds its destruction. How could such a treasure, once the pride of an empire, vanish without leaving a single definitive account of its fall? Some point to Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, during his civil war against Pompey, Caesar arrived in Alexandria and became embroiled in local power struggles. To defend himself, he ordered ships in the harbor to be set ablaze. That fire, according to some ancient sources, spread 2 parts of the city, including the library. Strabo, a Greek historian who visited Alexandria decades later, wrote about the Mausoleon but made no clear mention of the library, raising the possibility that much of it had already been destroyed by then. Others argue that it wasn't Caesar, but rather later Roman emperors or Christian zealots who sealed its fate. After all, Alexandria became a center for religious tension during the decline of paganism. The Roman Empire eventually adopted Christianity, and many of its followers saw classical texts as pagan and dangerous. The famed philosopher Hypatia, associated with the library and a symbol of Greek philosophy, was brutally murdered in 415 CE by a Christian mob. The library, or what remained of it, may have been lost in the same ideological fury. Then there's the Muslim conquest of Alexandria. In 642 CE, controversial account, often attributed to later sources, claims that the Caliph Omar ordered the burning of the library's remaining scrolls, arguing that if the texts agreed with the Quran, they were redundant, and if they disagreed, they were heretical. However, many modern scholars dispute the authenticity of this claim, suggesting that by the time the Arabs arrived, the library was long gone. The truth is likely more complicated. The Library of Alexandria may not have been destroyed in a single cataclysmic event, but through a series of gradual losses, fires, neglect, war, and ideological cleansing. It may have had several branches across Alexandria, some of which suffered different fates at different times. Each incident shaved away part of the treasure until nothing remained. And yet, even in its destruction, the library lived in legend, in hope, in the enduring dream that knowledge could unify humanity. The story of its burning is not just a tale of loss, but a reflection of humanity's eternal battle between enlightenment. The jungle is no stranger to shadows, some natural, some born from the hearts of men. And among those shadows was a hunter named Bearav. He wasn't from the village, nor did he care for the harmony of the forest. To him, the jungle was a marketplace, and elephants were not guardians, but trophies. He had heard the stories, whispers of an elephant who saved a man, of a bond between beast and human, of a creature wise and majestic, who walked into a village and touched a boy's shoulder. To others it was a miracle. To Bearav, it was a price tag. He watched from the trees the morning Tara came to drink from the man-made basin. He saw the villagers cheer and weep. He saw the elephant's eyes meet Arjun's, and in that moment his mind saw ivory long, strong, and rare. He saw riches back in the village. Arjun began to feel something was off. He noticed broken branches near the basin, tracks that didn't belong to the elephants. He even found a snare half buried in leaves, quickly dismantled. He knew the signs. Poachers. The word alone made his blood run cold. He warned the village elders. Some listened. Others believed no one would dare hurt Tara, not after what she had done. but Arjun wasn't willing to risk her life on their doubts. He took it upon himself to protect her, even if he had to do it alone. Each morning, he arrived before the herd. He watched from the trees, keeping his presence hidden. He carried no weapon, just a whistle and a slingshot, and the courage that comes from gratitude. Sometimes he saw nothing. Sometimes he saw signs, fresh footprints, cigarette butts, empty shell casings. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the forest gold, Arjun heard something. A twig snapped, not from an elephant, but from something lighter. Human. He crept through the bushes, heart pounding. Then he saw Himbarov, camouflaged, crouched with a rifle in hand, eyes fixed on Tara. Time slowed. Arjun had no time to think. No time to shout. He aimed his slingshot, found a stone, and fired. The stone hit Bairov's hand just as he raised the rifle. The gunshot rang out anyway, but it missed its mark. Tara flinched and roared in alarm. The herd scattered in a thundering panic. Bairov cursed, bleeding from his knuckles. He turned and saw Arjun rushing toward him, eyes wild with fury. The boy tackled the hunter, catching him by surprise. They wrestled in the mud, fists and elbows and shouts, until Bairov overpowered. Himman stood with the gun again. "You'll die for this, boy," he hissed. But before he could pull the trigger, the forest shook. From behind, the trees exploded with sound. Tara charged. Her eyes were wide with rage, her trunk raised high. She had seen everything, she remembered. She knew who had saved her once, and who now tried to harm her. Bairov froze. His hands trembled. He raised the rifle again, but he was too slow. Tara's trunk slammed into his chest, hurling him backwards like a leaf in a storm. It flew from his hands, hit a tree with a crack, and crumpled. Arjun stared in stunned silence. Tara approached the hunter's unconscious body, her breath hot, her massive form towering over him. But she didn't crush him. She didn't trample him. She turned away and stood beside Arjun instead, gentle, protective. By the time the villagers arrived with torches and shouts, the forest was still. Bairov was tied and carried back, his fate sealed by the law and the people's fury. And Tara? She returned to the jungle, but not as just another elephant. She had now become something greater, a guardian, not only of the forest, but of the fragile bridge between humans and nature. As Arjun stood by the river that night, watching the moon ripple in the water, he felt something in his chest shift. A peace, a promise, and something wordless that felt like love. Not the kind you feel for people, but the kind you feel for a soul that once pulled you from death and again walked into danger to save you. But fate was not yet done with them, because not all wounds are visible, and some dangers don't come with footsteps or guns. Some come in silence from within. The next test, one that would shake the bond between Arjun and Tara to its core, was already on its way. The village celebrated the end of the poacher's threat. Songs were sung, fires were lit, and stories flowed like river water. Children reenacted the scene where the elephant saved the boy. Elders spoke with pride about how nature had chosen to protect its own. Arjun tried to smile, but something deep inside him remained restless. He hadn't seen Tara in days. The jungle, too, had changed. The rains had returned. The river rose again, full and fierce, reclaiming its space and spirit. But with the blessing of water came sickness. A strange illness crept into the village, first in the cattle, then in the goats. Eyes dulled, legs trembled, and animals that once roamed freely now collapsed in silence. And then came the news Arjun feared. A mahout from the nearby sanctuary stumbled into the village one morning, breathless and pale. He spoke of an elephant deep in the forest, lying down, not moving. Others wouldn't approach. They said she had grown weak, that her body trembled. The mahout hadn't dared get close. But he had seen her eyes, and those eyes were hers. Dara's. Arjun didn't wait for permission. He ran. Through the wet forest floor, over roots and across streams, he ran with everything he had. The thought of Tara strong, mighty Tara helpless on the ground, shattered something inside him. When he reached the clearing the mahout had described, he stopped cold. There she was. Tara lay curled beneath a large tree, her breathing shallow, her skin dimmed. Flies buzzed. Her trunk lifted slightly, then fell again. Around her the forest was quiet, too quiet, as if even the trees mourned. Arjun approached slowly, tears already blurring his vision. He dropped to his knees beside her, placing a hand on her massive forehead. "I'm here," he whispered. Her eye opened, just slightly. A blink. A sign. She knew him. Arjun didn't leave her side. He called for help, begged the sanctuary too. Send a doctor, a vet, anyone? Days passed. Specialists came and went. They diagnosed the sickness and infection from drinking stagnant water during the drought. It had spread too deep. Medicine helped, but not enough. Tara's body remained still, her strength failing, but her spirit stayed. Villagers gathered, lighting fires around the clearing, keeping her warm. Children brought her fruit and leaves. Women sang softly. Even the animals of the forest came closer dear. Birds, even a wild boar or two, keeping quiet vigil. The jungle held its breath. One night, as stars spilled across the sky, Arjun sat by Tara's side, holding her trunk in his hands. "Please," he said softly, "not like this. You saved me. Twice. Let me save you now." As if in response, Tara's trunk squeezed gently, then silence. She didn't move again that night. The villagers feared the worst. But Arjun refused to leave. He slept beside her, whispering stories, memories, dreams. Then, as dawn began to break, something changed. Tara stirred, her trunk lifted slowly like a flower reaching for the sun. Her ears twitched, her eyes blinked. Then, with a groan that shook the birds from the trees, she rose, slowly, painfully. But she stood. The forest erupted in sound. Birds cried, monkeys shrieked, and the villagers clapped and wept. Tara stood tall once more. Her legs trembled, but her spirit had returned. It was not a miracle born from medicine. It was something else. A will, a bond, reason to fight. From that day forward, Arjun never left her side for long. They walked the forest paths together. He worked with the sanctuary to build a protected corridor for her herd, a space where humans and animals could coexist in peace. And whenever he stood by the river, he remembered the moment his boat sank, the moment a trunk broke the surface, the moment life returned. Years passed, Arjun grew older, Tara too, but their story lived in every corner of the jungle. Children still played by the basin they had once built together. Elders still pointed to the trees and said, "That's where." She stood when she saved him, and sometimes, on quiet mornings, Tara would walk alone to the river's edge and wait, because some bonds aren't broken by time or distance, some are carved into the soul. And the story of the elephant who rescued a man from drowning twice, in body and in spirit, never be forgotten. Not by the forest, not by the village, not by the heart of a boy who learned what it truly means to be saved.